It was late afternoon in New York City, and the winter cold had settled into the bones of the streets. Hundreds of people hurried past a particular corner where two figures stood frozen in place. An elderly white woman with silver hair and a boy of about 6 years old clung to each other, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. The crowd flowed around them like water around stones, indifferent and unstoppable. No one stopped. No one even slowed down. Only one person broke the pattern. A middle-aged black woman named Angela Johnson, still wearing her nurse's scrubs from the hospital shift she had just finished, paused mid-step. She was already late to pick up her daughter, already exhausted from a 12-hour day. But something in the grandmother's trembling hands and the child's frightened face made her stop. She walked toward them, asked if they were okay, and when she saw they had nowhere to go, she did something remarkable. She took off her own coat and wrapped it around the old woman's shoulders. Then she led them both through the snowy streets to her small, worn apartment. The next morning, as Angela prepared for another long shift at the hospital, a convoy of luxury cars rolled up to her building. A man in a black suit stepped out, his face marked by tears and relief. He was Richard Collins, the grandmother's son, and one of the wealthiest businessmen in the city. He found Angela in the doorway and embraced her without hesitation. "You were the only one who stopped," he said, his voice breaking. "You saved my mother and my son. My family owes you everything." That day, Angela received a check for $5 million. But the real gift was something no amount of money could buy. It was the confirmation that kindness still lived in a world that often felt too cold to care. The city never slept, but on that particular Tuesday evening, it felt especially awake. New York in winter was a test of endurance. The wind cut through layers of clothing, and the sidewalks were slick with ice that no one bothered to salt properly. People moved with their heads down, their hands jammed into pockets, their minds focused on getting home, getting warm, getting somewhere that wasn't here. In this river of hurried humanity, Mary Thompson stood with her grandson Ethan, completely invisible despite being utterly lost. She was 78 years old and had lived through enough winters to know when one was dangerous. This was dangerous. They had been walking for what felt like hours, though it had probably been less than one. Ethan had spotted a dog across the street and darted after it before she could grab his hand. By the time she caught up to him, she no longer knew which direction led back to her son's apartment building. Every building looked the same in this part of Manhattan: glass and steel and anonymous doorways. She tried to ask for help, but her voice was thin and shaky, and people mistook her outstretched hand for panhandling. They looked away or walked faster. One man actually swore at her. Ethan started to cry, which made everything worse. Children crying on city streets were background noise, nothing more. Mary could feel her heart hammering in a way that frightened her. She had a condition, something with her circulation that her doctor had warned her about. The cold was making it worse. Her fingers were going numb, and there was a tightness in her chest that she tried to hide from Ethan. The boy was already scared enough. She looked around desperately for a police officer, a security guard, anyone in a position of authority who might help. But the streets were filled only with ordinary people. And ordinary people in New York had learned long ago not to make eye contact with strangers. It was a survival mechanism. This studied indifference. Look at someone too long and they might ask you for something. Money, directions, time. Better to keep moving. So Mary and Ethan stood there, two figures slowly being swallowed by the approaching darkness and the indifference of hundreds of passers-by. The city lights came on, making everything simultaneously brighter and more confusing. Mary pulled Ethan closer and tried to remember a prayer she had learned as a child. Something about mercy. Something about grace. Angela Johnson had learned to notice things that other people missed. It came with the job. As a nurse, you trained yourself to spot the small signs. The slight change in color that meant infection. The tremor that suggested something neurological. The way someone held their body when they were in more pain than they admitted. So when she passed the corner of Fifth Avenue and saw the old woman and the little boy, she saw what dozens of others had walked right past. She saw the blue tinge to the woman's lips. She saw the way the boy's thin jacket provided almost no protection against the wind. She saw the terror that people mistake for ordinary discomfort. Angela was 42 years old, and had been a widow for 6 years. Her husband Marcus had died in a car accident, leaving her alone with their daughter Maya, who was now 10. Life since then had been a careful balancing act between work and home, between paying bills and saving something, anything, for Maya's future. They lived in a small apartment in a neighborhood that most people drove through rather than to. But it was clean, and it was theirs, and Angela kept it filled with as much love as she could generate on a nurse's salary and an exhausted mother's diminishing energy. She was tired that evening, the kind of tired that lived in your bones. She had worked a double shift because another nurse had called in sick, which meant 14 hours of checking vitals, administering medications, comforting frightened patients, and mediating between overworked doctors and demanding families. Her feet hurt, her back hurt. She was supposed to pick up Maya from her neighbor's apartment 20 minutes ago. But when she saw Mary and Ethan, she stopped walking. She stood there for a moment, watching them, watching everyone else not watch them. She thought about Marcus and what he would have done. Then she thought about Maya and what kind of mother she wanted to be for her daughter. What kind of person she wanted to teach Maya to become. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder and walked over to them. "Excuse me," she said gently. "Are you folks okay?" Mary looked up at her with such relief that Angela felt her heart contract. "We're lost," the old woman said simply. "I can't find my son's building, and I think I'm not feeling very well." Angela knelt down so she was at Ethan's eye level. The boy had stopped crying, but his face was red and blotchy, his nose running from the cold. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Ethan," the boy whispered. "That's a good, strong name." "I'm Angela. Are you cold?" He nodded, not trusting his voice. Angela stood and immediately took off her coat. It wasn't expensive, just a practical winter jacket from a discount store, but it was warm and it was hers. She wrapped it around Mary's shoulders, ignoring the woman's protests. "You need this more than I do right now. I've got another layer underneath." This was not entirely true, but it was the kind of lie that Angela told easily. The kind that made life slightly better for someone else, at minimal cost to herself. "Do you know your son's phone number?" Angela asked Mary. "We can call him." Mary's eyes filled with tears. "I can't remember it. I used to know it by heart, but now I can't remember. I can't remember anything." Angela recognized the signs. The confusion, the trembling, the early stages of hypothermia mixed with what might be the onset of shock. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. The operator was professional but dismissive. Without a clear medical emergency, without signs of immediate life-threatening danger, they couldn't send an ambulance. "Try calling the police non-emergency line," the operator suggested. "They can help with lost persons." But Angela knew how that would go. She had seen it before. The police would take a report, eventually, and Mary and Ethan would wait in the cold for another hour or two before anyone arrived. If they arrived at all. It was a Tuesday night, and the city had bigger problems than one confused grandmother and a scared child. She looked at Mary's blue-tinged lips again. She looked at Ethan's shivering form. She thought about the warm apartment waiting for her, the soup she had planned to heat up for dinner, the comfortable couch where she and Maya usually watched their evening shows together. Then she made a decision that would change her life, though she didn't know it yet. "Come with me," she said. "Both of you. My apartment is just a few blocks away. We'll get you warm, get some food in you, and figure out how to find your family." Mary stared at her. "You don't know us." "No, ma'am, I don't. But I know you need help, and I can provide it. That's enough for now." Angela took Ethan's hand and offered her arm to Mary. The three of them began walking through the snow-dusted streets, an unlikely trio that no one else seemed to notice. Just three more people trying to get home before the night got any colder. Angela's apartment building was nothing special. 5 stories of brick and concrete, built sometime in the 1960s and maintained just well enough to avoid condemnation. The elevator worked about 60% of the time. Today it did not, which meant climbing 3 flights of stairs with an elderly woman who could barely catch her breath. "Almost there," Angela kept saying, in the same encouraging voice she used with her patients. "Just a few more steps." When they finally reached her door, Maya was waiting in the hallway. She had let herself in from the neighbor's apartment with her own key, worried because her mother was so late. "Mom?" Maya's voice was equal parts relief and accusation. Then she saw the strangers. Who are they? This is Mrs. Thompson and her grandson Ethan. They got lost and they need somewhere warm to stay while we help them find their family. Can you be a good host and show Ethan where the bathroom is? I think he'd like to wash his face. Maya was 10 years old and had inherited her mother's instinct for reading situations quickly. She saw the scared look in the little boy's eyes and immediately softened. Come on, she said to Ethan, holding out her hand. We've got hot chocolate. The good kind with the little marshmallows. The apartment was small but immaculate. Angela kept it that way because she knew how quickly small spaces could become chaotic. The living room contained a worn couch covered with a bright quilt that her grandmother had made years ago, a television that was older than Maya, and bookshelves made from concrete blocks and wooden planks. The kitchen was barely big enough for two people, but it was clean and functional, and it smelled like the vanilla candles Angela burned when she could afford them. She settled Mary on the couch, propping pillows behind her back, and went to start some water for tea. Then she changed her mind and made hot chocolate for everyone, the kind with the little marshmallows just like Maya had promised. While the milk heated, she found her thickest sweater and brought it to Mary. Let me check your vitals, Angela said, pulling out the small kit she kept at home. Blood pressure cuff, thermometer, basic first aid supplies. The habits of her profession followed her everywhere. Mary's blood pressure was higher than it should be, and her body temperature had dropped to 95 degrees. Not quite hypothermic, but close enough to be concerning. Angela wrapped her in blankets and made her drink the hot chocolate slowly, monitoring for any signs that the situation was worsening. As Mary gradually stopped shivering, color returning to her face, she began to tell her story. Her son Richard was a successful businessman, the kind who appeared in newspapers and business magazines. He had begged her to move to New York from her small town in Connecticut so he could take care of her properly. She had resisted for years, enjoying her independence, but after her husband died, the loneliness had become too much. Richard means well, Mary said, cradling the mug of hot chocolate in both hands. But he's so busy, always working, always traveling. He hired someone to stay with me during the day, but I don't need a babysitter. I'm old, not incompetent. This afternoon, she had decided to take Ethan for a walk. Her son had been working from home, distracted by phone calls and video meetings, and Ethan had been getting restless. Mary had thought some fresh air would do them both good. She knew the neighborhood well enough, or thought she did. But then Ethan had chased the dog, and in the confusion in the crowds, she had gotten turned around. I tried to call Richard, she said, her voice small, but my phone died. I forgot to charge it this morning. Angela listened without judgment. She had seen this before, too. The elderly trying to maintain their dignity and independence even as age made everything more difficult. The well-meaning adult children who hired help but didn't quite understand that monitoring wasn't the same as companionship. The small oversights, like an uncharged phone, that could cascade into genuine crises. It's okay, Angela said. We all forget things. Do you remember Richard's work address? Or the name of his company? Mary's face brightened. Collins Investments. He's the CEO. Angela pulled out her phone and searched for the company. It took less than 30 seconds to find the main number. She dialed, and after navigating through several automated menus, she finally reached a human being. This is going to sound unusual, Angela said, but I'm calling because I have Richard Collins's mother with me. She and his son got separated from him this afternoon. They're safe, but I'm sure he's worried. There was a long pause. Then, who are you? How do I know this isn't some kind of scam? Angela hadn't thought about how this might sound. Random nurse claims to have billionaire's family. She could almost hear the security protocols clicking into place. I'm a nurse. My name is Angela Johnson. They're at my apartment because they were lost and cold. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just trying to reunite them with their family. If you want to verify, you can call this number back. Or I can give you my nursing license number. Whatever makes sense. Another pause. Then, hold please. The wait felt endless. Angela made more hot chocolate. She found some crackers and cheese in her refrigerator and set them out. Maya and Ethan were sitting on the floor, playing with Maya's collection of small plastic animals, narrating elaborate adventures involving jungle rescues and ocean voyages. Children adapted so quickly to new situations. Adults could learn from that. The phone rang. Angela answered it on the first ring. Is this Angela Johnson? The voice was male, urgent, barely controlled. Yes. Are you Richard? Is my mother okay? Is Ethan okay? Let me talk to them. Right now. They're fine. They're warm and safe. Just a little shaken up. Hold on. She handed the phone to Mary, who burst into tears the moment she heard her son's voice. The conversation was a jumble of apologies and reassurances. Yes, they were fine. Yes, this woman was taking good care of them. Yes, here's the address. Yes, please come as soon as you can. Richard Collins was there within 20 minutes, which meant he had probably broken every traffic law in the city. Angela heard the commotion in the hallway first. Multiple footsteps, urgent voices, the sound of someone taking the stairs two at a time because waiting for the elevator would have taken too long. The knock on the door was loud and frantic. Angela opened it to find a man in an expensive suit, his hair disheveled, his eyes red from crying. Behind him were two other people, probably assistants or security, looking uncomfortable in the narrow hallway. Richard pushed past her, not rudely but urgently, and went straight to his mother. He dropped to his knees beside the couch and wrapped his arms around her. And for a moment, he wasn't a powerful businessman at all. He was just a son who had almost lost his mother. I'm sorry, he kept saying. I'm so sorry. I should have been paying attention. I should have been there with you. Ethan ran to his father, and Richard pulled him into the embrace too, the three of them clinging to each other in Angela's tiny living room. It was such a raw moment that Angela looked away, giving them privacy even though they were in her space. When Richard finally stood up, his professional composure was beginning to return, but his eyes were still wet. He turned to Angela and seemed to really see her for the first time. He looked at the modest apartment, the old furniture, the clear signs that this was not a wealthy household. He looked at Angela in her worn scrubs and tired face. He looked at Maya, who was watching everything with wide eyes. You brought them here, he said. You took them in. They needed help, Angela said simply. Do you know who I am? I know you're their family. That's all that matters. Richard shook his head slowly, and for a moment he looked like he might start crying again. Everyone walked past them. The office told me that when they reviewed the security footage later. Hundreds of people walked right past my mother and my son, but you stopped. You, of all people, stopped. There was something in the way he said you of all people that made Angela stiffen slightly. She knew what he meant, even if he didn't quite say it. She was black. They were white. She was poor. They were rich. The mathematics of who helps whom in America had never been simple or fair. I stopped because they needed help, Angela said, her voice calm but firm. That's what people are supposed to do. We're supposed to help each other. All of us. Richard nodded slowly. Then he did something that Angela didn't expect. He pulled out his wallet, extracted what looked like several credit cards, and held them out to her. Whatever you want. Whatever you need. There's no limit. Just tell me what I can do to thank you. Angela looked at the cards and felt something hard form in her chest. I don't want your money, Mr. Collins. Please. Let me do something. You gave them shelter, warmth, food. You took care of them when everyone else walked by. There must be something. I did what any decent person should do. I don't need to be paid for being decent. The words came out sharper than she intended, and Richard flinched. He stood there with his credit cards outstretched, looking suddenly lost in a different way than his mother had been lost. Like he had reached for a solution and found it just out of reach. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't mean to offend you. I don't know how to process this. My mother could have died out there. Ethan could have died. And you saved them without even knowing who they were. That's the point, Angela said, gentler now. I didn't need to know who they were. They were two people who needed help. That was enough. Mary had been watching this exchange, and now she reached out and took Angela's hand. You're a remarkable woman, the old woman said. Thank you. Doesn't seem like enough, but thank you. Angela squeezed her hand. You're welcome. Both of you are welcome. Anytime you need help, you know where I am. Richard carefully put his credit cards away. He looked around the apartment again, and Angela could see him taking mental notes. The peeling paint on one wall. The space heater in the corner because the building's heating system was unreliable. The second-hand everything. I have your address now, he said. Would it be okay if I stayed in touch? I'd like to know how you're doing. And my mother would like to thank you properly when she's feeling better. Angela wanted to say no. She wanted to close this door on this strange evening and return to her normal life. But she looked at Mary's grateful face and Ethan's small hand clutching his father's, and she found herself nodding. That would be fine. Richard's assistants helped Mary and Ethan down to the car. Before they left, Richard turned back one more time. You said something about being decent, about how any decent person would have helped. But you're wrong about that. No one else did. Just you. That means something. Then they were gone, and Angela was alone with Maya in their small apartment that suddenly felt very quiet. Mom? Maya said. Are you okay? I'm fine, baby. Just tired. That was really nice. What you did. It was just the right thing to do. But you always do the right thing, Maya said, and there was something like wonder in her voice. Even when it's hard. Even when no one else does. Angela pulled her daughter into a hug, holding her tight against the sudden wave of emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. She thought about all the times she had been the one who needed help and hadn't received it. All the time she had been invisible on city streets, just another black woman that people looked through rather than at. She thought about Marcus and how he used to say that you couldn't change the world, but you could change someone's world, just one person at a time. Do the next right thing, even if no one was watching, especially if no one was watching. Go brush your teeth, she told Maya. It's late, and we both have early mornings. That night, Angela lay in bed unable to sleep, replaying the evening over and over. She thought about Mary's blue lips and Ethan's frightened eyes. She thought about Richard's confusion when she refused his money. She thought about the hundreds of people who had walked past, their indifference, a kind of violence, all its own. She didn't know it yet, but while she lay awake in her apartment, Richard Collins was making a series of phone calls to his lawyers, to his accountants, to his public relations team. He was putting something in motion that would arrive at Angela's door with the morning sunday. The next day started like any other. Angela's alarm went off at 5:30 in the morning. She made breakfast for Maya, packed her daughter's lunch, reminded her to finish her homework during study hall. She put on her scrubs and gathered her bag and prepared to face another long shift at the hospital. She was locking her apartment door when she heard it. The sound of multiple car engines, the sound of footsteps in the stairwell, the sound of her neighbors opening their doors to see what was happening. Angela walked down to the street and stopped dead. 5 black cars were parked in front of her building, the kind of cars that had drivers and tinted windows. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk, people pointing and taking pictures with their phones. And standing in the middle of it all was Richard Collins, holding a briefcase, flanked by 2 people in business suits who looked like lawyers. Miss Johnson, Richard said, and his voice carried in the cold morning air. I'm sorry to ambush you like this, but I needed to see you. I needed to thank you properly. Angela felt her face grow hot. All her neighbors were watching. Mrs. Chen from the 4th floor, the Rodriguez family from down the hall. People she had lived near for years but barely knew because everyone in the city kept to themselves. Mr. Collins, this really isn't necessary. I need to get to work. I know. I've already called the hospital. They know you'll be late. I've donated $100,000 to their emergency services fund. It's handled. Angela's mouth fell open. You did what? Please, Richard said. Just give me 5 minutes. That's all I ask. What could she do? She was standing in the street with dozens of witnesses and a billionaire holding a briefcase. She nodded stiffly, and Richard stepped closer, opening the briefcase so only she could see what was inside. It was a check. Angela had never seen a check with so many zeros. $5 million. Made out to Angela Marie Johnson. I can't accept this, she said immediately, her voice barely a whisper. You saved my mother's life. You saved my son. This is nothing compared to what they're worth to me. It's everything, Angela said. It's more money than I'll make in my entire life. I can't. I won't. Then don't think of it as payment. Think of it as possibility. What would you do if money wasn't a concern? What would you change? What would you fix? Angela thought about the question. She thought about the single mothers she knew who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford childcare. She thought about nursing students who dropped out because they couldn't afford tuition. She thought about the emergency room where she worked, always understaffed, always overwhelmed. I'd help people, she said finally. Other women like me. Other single parents trying to keep their heads above water. Then do it. Take this money and help people. That's all I'm asking. Let my family's gratitude become someone else's hope. Angela looked at the check again. $5 million. She thought about Maya's college fund that currently held about $2,000. She thought about the leak in their bathroom that she couldn't afford to fix. She thought about all the ways this money could change her life. But more than that, she thought about all the ways it could change other people's lives. If I take this, she said slowly, I want to start a foundation, a scholarship fund for nursing students who are single parents, and a grant program for women trying to go back to school. Richard smiled, and it was genuine and warm. I think that's perfect. My lawyers can help you set it up. All the paperwork, all the legal structure. Consider it done. I don't know how to run a foundation. You'll learn, and you'll have help. I'll make sure of it. Angela took the check with trembling hands. It felt like it weighed nothing and everything at the same time. Around her, she could hear people whispering, could feel their phones pointed in her direction, recording this moment for posterity and social media. Richard reached out and took her other hand, shaking it formally. Thank you, he said, for reminding me what really matters, for showing my mother and my son that there are still good people in the world. Then he leaned in closer and said something that only Angela could hear. I know you did this because it was right, not because of who we were. That's what makes it mean something. Don't let anyone tell you different. Angela nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The cars pulled away, leaving Angela standing on the sidewalk with a check that would change her life. Her neighbors crowded around her, suddenly interested, suddenly friendly. Everyone wanted to know what had happened, what was in the briefcase, whether she was rich now. Angela carefully folded the check and put it in her purse. I need to get to work, she said, and pushed through the crowd toward the subway station. The story exploded across the internet within hours. Someone had recorded the whole exchange and uploaded it. Black nurse helps lost white grandmother and child. Gets $5 million. The video was shared thousands of times. Then tens of thousands. Then millions. Angela's phone began ringing constantly. News stations wanted interviews. Morning shows wanted her to fly to their studios. Magazines wanted to do profiles. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. At first, Angela ignored it all. She went to work, came home, took care of Maya, but the attention didn't stop. Reporters showed up at the hospital. They waited outside her apartment building. Her coworkers suddenly treated her differently, some congratulatory, some resentful. Finally, she agreed to do one interview. Just one. She chose a local news station, sat in their studio under hot lights, and faced a smiling anchor who asked her all the predictable questions. How does it feel to receive $5 million? What are you going to do with the money? Do you think race played a role in this story? To that last question, Angela paused. She thought about how to answer honestly without making things worse. I think, she said carefully, that kindness should cross all lines. Color, class, everything. When someone needs help, you help them. That's all there is to it. But you're being praised as a hero for doing something that many would say is basic human decency. Maybe that's the problem, Angela said. Maybe basic human decency has become so rare that when someone practices it, we call them a hero. That shouldn't be extraordinary. It should be ordinary. But it isn't ordinary, is it? The video shows hundreds of people walking past Mrs. Thompson and her grandson. You were the only one who stopped. Angela looked directly into the camera. Then we need to be better. All of us. We need to stop walking past each other. We need to stop pretending we don't see people who need help. We need to remember that we're all human beings, and that should matter more than anything else. The interview clip went viral. Suddenly, everyone was talking about Angela's words. We need to be better became a phrase people repeated. A hashtag emerged. People started sharing stories of times they had helped strangers or been helped by strangers. But there was backlash, too. Some people accused Angela of orchestrating the whole thing for money. Anonymous accounts claimed she had known who Mary Thompson was all along, that she had planned the entire rescue. Others said she was being rewarded for doing something white people did every day without recognition. Angela tried not to read the hateful messages, but they found their way to her anyway. Late at night, when she couldn't sleep, she would open her phone and see them. The accusations, the mockery, the conspiracy theories. "Don't look at that garbage," Maya told her one evening, finding her mother crying over her phone. "You know what you did and why you did it. That's all that matters." "But what if they're right? What if I shouldn't have taken the money?" "Mom, you took the money to help other people. You haven't spent any of it on yourself. That's not wrong. That's beautiful." Angela had indeed been working with Richard's lawyers to establish the foundation, the Angela Johnson Scholarship Fund for single-parent nurses. They had already awarded their first 10 scholarships, each one covering full tuition and living expenses for nursing students who were raising children alone. The applications that came in made Angela cry. Women who had been working as nursing assistants for 10 years, desperate to finish their degrees, but unable to afford school. Single fathers trying to enter the profession but stuck in minimum wage jobs. People who had almost given up hope of changing their circumstances. Angela read every application herself. She wanted to meet every recipient, to hear their stories, to understand their struggles. In each one, she saw a reflection of herself. The single mother working impossible hours. The person trying to build a better life against overwhelming odds. The human being who just needed someone to believe in them. 3 months after the street encounter that changed everything, Angela stood at a podium in a hotel conference room. It was the first scholarship awards ceremony, and all 10 recipients were there with their families. Richard Collins sat in the front row with Mary and Ethan. The media was present but had been asked to stay quiet and respectful. Angela looked out at the faces watching her and felt the weight of what this moment meant. "I don't consider myself a hero," she began. "I'm just someone who stopped when other people kept walking." But maybe that's what we need more of in this world. Maybe we need more people willing to stop, willing to see each other, willing to help. She told them about the Foundation's mission, about how education could break cycles of poverty, about how supporting parents meant supporting children, about how investing in nurses meant investing in communities, because nurses were the backbone of healthcare. "These 10 people standing before you tonight represent possibility," Angela said. "They represent what happens when someone gets a chance, when someone believes in them, when someone stops walking and says, 'I see you, and you matter.'" The audience applauded. The scholarship recipients came forward one by one to receive their awards. A woman named Jennifer who had 3 children and had been trying to finish nursing school for 8 years. A man named Thomas who had lost his wife to cancer and was determined to become an oncology nurse. A young mother named Keisha who had aged out of foster care and was fighting to create stability for her infant son. Each story was different. Each story was the same. They were all people who had been trying to climb a mountain, and suddenly someone had appeared and said, "Let me help you carry that load." After the ceremony, Mary Thompson approached Angela. The old woman looked healthy now, her color good, her eyes bright. "I want to volunteer," she said. "With the foundation. I have time and I have experience. Let me help." Angela embraced her. "I would love that. Thank you." Ethan was with his grandmother, and he tugged on Angela's hand. "Miss Angela? Remember me?" "Of course I remember you, sweetheart. How could I forget? Daddy says you saved us, and that you're using the reward to save other people too." "I'm trying to help people. I don't know about saving them." "That's what saving means," Ethan said with the certainty of a 6-year-old. "Helping people when they need it." Out of the mouths of children, Angela thought, simple truth spoken plainly. The months that followed were a blur of activity. Angela took a leave of absence from the hospital to focus on building the foundation properly. Richard's team helped her hire staff, set up proper accounting systems, and establish partnerships with nursing schools across the country. They expanded beyond scholarships. They created emergency grants for nurses facing financial crises. They funded childcare programs at hospitals so nurses could work without worrying about their children. They provided mental health support for healthcare workers dealing with the trauma and stress of their profession. Every decision Angela made, she made with one question in mind. Will this help someone who needs it? Will this make the world a little bit better? She never forgot what it felt like to be exhausted and broke and worried. She never forgot the desperation of trying to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. She never forgot the fear that came with raising a child alone in a world that often felt hostile to single mothers, especially Black single mothers. So, she built the foundation to address all of it. Not just money, but support. Not just opportunities, but genuine help. The kind of help that saw people as whole human beings rather than problems to be solved. A year after the encounter on the street, Angela was invited to speak at a nursing school graduation. She stood before 200 newly minted nurses and told them Mary and Ethan's story. She told them about the hundreds of people who had walked past. She told them about the decision to stop. You're entering a profession built on care, she said. But care can't exist only in hospital rooms. It has to exist in the world. You have to be willing to see suffering and respond to it, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. She talked about the foundation and the people it had helped. She talked about how one act of kindness had rippled outward, creating waves that touched lives she would never meet. I didn't stop that day because I thought I would get $5 million, Angela said. I stopped because it was right, because they needed help and I could provide it. That's all. That's everything. She paused and looked out at the young faces watching her. These people about to enter a world that would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Here's what I want you to remember. You can't save everyone. You can't fix every problem. But you can do the next right thing. You can help the person in front of you. You can stop when everyone else is walking. That might not seem like much, but it's everything to the person who needed someone to stop. The applause was long and genuine. After the ceremony, several students approached her. They wanted to know how to apply for the Foundation's programs. They wanted to share their own stories of helping strangers or being helped by strangers. They wanted to believe that the world could be better than it often appeared. Angela gave them her card and her email. She hugged them and encouraged them and sent them into the world with a blessing that her grandmother used to give her. May you be brave enough to be kind. That evening, Angela returned to her apartment. She still lived there, despite having enough money now to move anywhere she wanted. She had fixed the leak and updated the appliances, but she hadn't moved. This was home. This was where the story had started. Maya was doing homework at the kitchen table. At 12 now, she was becoming her own person, sharp and thoughtful and kind in ways that made Angela's heart ache with pride. How was the speech? Maya asked. Good, I think. I hope I said the right things. You always say the right things, Mom. Angela smiled and sat down beside her daughter. She thought about all the ways her life had changed in 1 year. The money, yes, but more than that. The purpose, the sense that she was part of something larger than herself. She thought about Mary Thompson, who now volunteered at the foundation 3 days a week, reading applications and conducting interviews with the gentle wisdom of someone who had lived through hardship and emerged with compassion intact. She thought about Richard Collins, who had become not just a donor but a friend, someone who called to check on her, and who had learned to use his wealth and influence to make real change rather than just writing checks. She thought about Ethan, who had recently written her a letter in careful second-grade handwriting. Thank you for saving me and Grandma. When I grow up, I want to help people too. She thought about the scholarship recipients who were now working as nurses in hospitals and clinics across the country, providing care to people who needed it most. She thought about all the people who had watched the video of that moment on the street, and maybe, just maybe, had been inspired to stop the next time they saw someone who needed help. Most of all, she thought about the version of herself from 1 year ago, tired and broke, and just trying to make it through another day. That woman couldn't have imagined this moment. But she had done the thing that led to it. She had stopped walking. She had chosen kindness over convenience. Mom? Maya's voice pulled her back to the present. Are you okay? Yeah, baby. I'm good. Better than good. Are you happy? Angela considered the question. Was she happy? The attention had been overwhelming. The criticism had been painful. The responsibility of the foundation was enormous. Her life was busier, and more complicated than it had ever been. But yes, she was happy. Because she was doing work that mattered. Because she was helping people build better lives. Because she had learned that one person stopping, one person choosing kindness, could start a ripple that became a wave. "I'm happy," she said. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Late that night, after Maya had gone to bed, Angela sat alone in the living room where she had once given hot chocolate to a frightened grandmother and child. She thought about the random nature of it all. If she had walked a different route that day, if she had been running even more late, if she had been too tired to stop, but she had stopped. And in stopping, she had learned something fundamental about what it meant to be human. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't about grand gestures or perfect virtue. It was about seeing someone who needed help and choosing to provide it. It was about recognizing that we were all connected, all responsible for each other in ways both small and profound. The world was cold and hard and often cruel. But it didn't have to be. Not if people stopped walking. Not if people chose to see each other. Angela walked to the window and looked down at the street where she had found Mary and Ethan 1 year ago. It was empty now, just shadows and streetlights, and the eternal movement of the city that never slept. But she knew that somewhere out there, someone else was lost. Someone else needed help. And maybe, just maybe, there was someone willing to stop. Someone who would see them and recognize their humanity and do the next right thing. That was the world Angela was trying to build. Not a world without problems, but a world where people stopped to help solve them. Not a world without pain, but a world where that pain was met with compassion. One person at a time. One act of kindness at a time. One decision to stop walking and start seeing. It wasn't much, perhaps, but it was everything. It was the foundation upon which better worlds were built. Angela turned away from the window and went to bed. Tomorrow, she would wake up early and go to the foundation office. She would read more applications. She would award more scholarships. She would answer emails from people asking for help and emails from people offering help. She would continue the work that had started on a cold afternoon when she made the simple choice to stop. And somewhere in the city, in cities across the country, other people would make similar choices. They would see someone who needed help and they would provide it. They would stop walking and start caring. The ripples would continue spreading outward, touching lives in ways no one could fully measure or understand. But that was okay. The point wasn't to measure the impact. The point was to be the impact. To be the person who stopped when everyone else kept walking. To be the reminder that kindness still lived in this cold world. To be the proof that one person could make a difference, even in a city of millions. That was Angela's legacy now. Not the money or the foundation or the awards and recognition, but the simple truth that when faced with suffering, she had chosen to respond with love. And in a world that often felt starved for love, that simple choice meant everything.